As coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Get your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome in, DFS Army. It's FantasyFling. We are taking a look at Week 7, Yahoo DFS main slate. Let's go. All right, so before we go ahead and look at the slate for this week, let's take a look back at last week. Some of the cash game plays we liked. I had a comment on the YouTube in the comments basically saying, I like this player over that player this week. And, kind of questioning why you would choose like Patrick Mahomes, for example, over, a Lamar Jackson type. And the reason being, in our cash games, we want floor. We don't want a lot of variance in our players. We want floor. We want high median scoring. So what we're going to choose is players that are going to get a lot of targets each and every week. They're going to get a lot of volume, and they're going to get a lot of opportunities to score touchdowns. Specifically on Yahoo, half PPR format, we need touchdowns. So those are super important. So that's why, on DraftKings, we may like a player who's going to get a lot of targets because it's PPR, but they may not get in the end zone, which is not an issue. But in half PPR format, we need players to score touchdowns. So this past week, keeping that in mind, what we really liked was Mahomes, the game environment going against San Francisco. Mahomes has had a really good floor. He's been over 25 points for over a month now. And then Josh Jacobs has been on an incredible tear. So he was certainly in a fantastic matchup going against Houston last week. So we love Jacobs. He got 3 touchdowns, 143 yards. He's been on a great run, and we like him again this week. Kenneth Walker, same thing in that Seattle and Chargers game. We really liked Kenneth Walker, and he just continues to be underpriced. So he got 28 points for us. T. Higgins was in a great matchup. Jamar Chase got all the touchdowns, but T. Higgins certainly got a lot of volume. He was great. CD Lamb, we expected a much bigger day from him, but he still got a lot of targets, 6 targets, 4 receptions, and a touchdown. So 8 points, a touchdown. Again, we need touchdowns. We'll take that. Godwin, we projected him to do really well. Didn't quite get there. Same with Cade Otton, but at least the volume was there, so they got enough points, with the Kenneth Walkers, Josh Jacobs, and Patrick Mahomes really carried this lineup. In cash games and 50-50s, we really only need to be 50% of the field. So this lineup certainly got there. I believe there was 500 people in this 50-50 tournament, 50-50 contest, and placed 84th. So this is certainly what we look for, and what we will continue to look for this week as we look at the Week 8 slate. So let's go ahead and look at some of the top games environments that we want to target this week. Now, there are a few that really stand out. First off, we have Detroit and Miami. Now, Tua's back, and Detroit, their pass defense is it's bad. Their defense overall has just been poor. They're much better at home, so this is a game that we do like to shoot out a little bit. So it's got a 51-point game total. Now, according to the Statsational Power Rankings, this is a game that can actually go for 57 points. That's what they have projected. Statsational has projected with Detroit actually looking to score 27 points in this game, but with Miami being the 30-point projected team total. The good thing about this game is obviously it's projected as high scoring, but both Miami, Detroit are projected for about 130 running yards and both over 280 passing yards. So this is a game environment we really want to target. I think you could certainly target in cash games, but definitely in tournaments like the Yahoo Baller. So another game that projects really well, we got Arizona going against Minnesota. Arizona, they got back DeAndre Hopkins last week. Their offense looked much better with DeAndre Hopkins on the field. He got over 100 receiving yards, so he's certainly in playing cash. I do think you could play Murray now with Hopkins back in tournaments, but I don't really like Murray in cash just because he's been too variant of a quarterback. On the Minnesota side, Justin Jefferson, he's averaged like 130 plus yards over several weeks, hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. He's really due for some positive touchdown regression. He's the top pay up option at wide receiver this week, but certainly whether or not you play him in cash games, you have to have exposure, I believe, to him in tournaments like the Yahoo Baller. So Minnesota, their passing offense projects for 270 points, according to StatStational power rankings for this week, and Arizona over 260. So pretty good game environment. Another game, we have Las Vegas Raiders going against New Orleans. So 49.5 points. This is one of the kind of the same thing. This projects as a close game, a lot of yards on the ground, both over 130 and through the air. So both Las Vegas being a little less, over 225 yards, but New Orleans, I don't know. I guess it's going to be another Dalton week, over 280 passing yards. So there's certainly pieces we like in this. Josh Jacobs has been absolutely incredible, as I just mentioned. Obviously, there's ways to get different off of him in tournaments, if him being the chalk. And then on the New Orleans side, Chris Olave projects really well. We think Michael Thomas is going to sit out this week. Of course, Kamara is always in play. Taysom Hill's kind of that wild card. And then, they have secondary and third options. It'll probably be cheap and low owned. Now, some of the other games on the slate, we'll just kind of go through all these. Those are the main 3 to 4 games that we really like. But Carolina versus Atlanta, there's not really a lot to like here. Atlanta, they just aren't passing the ball at a high enough volume. So, I mean, Mariota, if you do play Mariota, you're basically just playing him for rushing upside because, he does run the ball, but he's not passing it nearly enough. So I don't like London or Pitts or, really anybody else. I do think Tyler Algier, certainly you could play him or, Huntley and GPPs, but certainly not cash viable. Then on the Carolina side, that was surprising last week. They beat Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay just looks awful right now. And you would have thought Tampa Bay would have crushed Carolina after Carolina traded Christian McCaffrey away and basically was just giving up on the season. But they made DJ Moore the focal point of the offense, and Carolina has a very poor pass defense, Atlanta has a very poor pass defense. So Carolina, I do think DJ Moore is a great play this week. Other than that, there's not really anything I like out of that. Chicago and Dallas. Now, this is a game that I really don't want a lot of. It's a low-scoring game. That said, there are some pieces in this game. Now, Ezekiel Elliott, as of right now, he is projected to – he's trending towards missing the game. So I think Tony Pollard will be a great play this week if he's not in a timeshare with Zeke. And I think Lamb does project pretty well, but other than that, there's really not a whole lot that you'd like from this game. Some of the other games, New England versus the Jets, not much here. New England, we don't know what's going on with quarterback. Is it Bailey Zappi? Is it Mac Jones? Ramondre Stevenson, I love him, but obviously they got in a little bit of a negative game script last week, which was good for Ramondre Stevenson, get a lot of receptions out of the backfield. But you got to think Damian Harris, another week removed from his injury. We don't know what the split's going to be, so it's really hard to project with that game. The Jets, they lost Breece Hall for the season. They traded for James Robinson. We don't know what his carries are going to be like week 1. If we knew that he was hardly going to play, we'd love Michael Carter, but until we see it, we probably just want to avoid it in cash. Now, this is something that you would like. This game, Pittsburgh versus Philly, the Pennsylvania battle. We like the Eagles side of this game. Team stacks, absolutely, in tournaments. Jalen Hurts is definitely cash viable. There's not a whole lot I like in cash outside of Jalen Hurts, just because A.J. Brown not quite getting enough targets. Certainly Goddard, I think, is cash viable at tight end. But other than that, I really just like Jalen Hurts in cash. And then I think you could obviously stack Hurts with A.J. Brown, with Devonta Smith, and with Goddard and team stacks this week. Not forcing to bring back. Totally unnecessary, with the Steelers having a very low team total. Now, Tennessee going against Houston. Derrick Henry is in a smash spot this week. We'll get into this a little bit more, but he has absolutely gashed Houston. The last 2 times he's played them, that's the worst run defense in the league. He's in a tremendous spot. So we love Derrick Henry this week. And then Washington going against Indy. Indy, we have Sam Ehlinger starting. We don't know what their offense is going to look like. I could certainly see playing Henry in tournaments, just thinking they're just going to lean on Henry and tote the rock. As far as the passing offense, I don't want anything to do with it. But on the Washington side, Heineke, he came to life last week. He looked pretty good against Green Bay. He had a rough start to the game, but he had a touchdown to Terry McLaurin. So he looked pretty good last week. And then, they might be getting Jahan Dotson back this week. Curtis Samuel projects really well from fantasy points per dollar perspective. The backfield with the timeshare with Gibson and Robinson, we don't really know there. So pretty much an avoid at that point. And they have a low team total. So certainly not looking to stack that team this week, but I do think Samuel actually projects quite well. Now, San Fran going against the Chargers. San Fran, they surprised us last week with that trade for Christian McCaffrey. He played. He looked great. We still don't know how much of a focal point of the offense he's going to be right away. And he's priced high, and there's some much better options, I think, with both Saquon and Henry and Jacobs, really all 3 of those guys. Then I'm just probably going to avoid Christian McCaffrey this week. But on the Rams side, I think obviously Cooper Kupp is always in play, and then Darrell Henderson does project pretty well from fantasy points per dollar basis this week. Now, last game, and in fact, this is on my list, and this is projected from Statsational's power rankings to be a much better game than currently we're seeing as far as Vegas over-unders. But New York Giants going against Seattle. So Barkley looks really good. Certainly you have to have exposure to Barkley in tournaments. For me, I'm going to be playing Henry over Barkley this week in cash. But you got to have Barkley in tournaments. He's just looked exceptional. He hasn't gotten a lot of touchdowns this year, but he's certainly got the yardage, and he just looks very explosive. I think, one of the main things is Daniel Jones really can steal touchdowns from Barkley. So that is, something that you're going to consider when you're splitting hairs, when you're choosing between like a Derrick Henry or a Barkley. But love him in tournaments. And on the Seattle side, Geno continues to look really good. It's been pretty much the story of the NFL so far this year. Now, DK Metcalf may be out this game. Last week, it didn't matter. It was like DK's out. Geno hits Marquise Goodwin for a touchdown. Tyler Lockett's been battling a hamstring injury, but he did play all the way last week, and he projects quite well this week, especially with DK Metcalf out. And then Kenneth Walker, just a very good young running back. He's still underpriced. I believe he's $25 this week. So he's just looked very good so far. And obviously Pete Carroll loves to lean on the running back. So he's going to be in play again this week. So let's go over to my sheet real quick here. And this is my article that I'm writing, and it should be done here in the next hour or so after I'm done with the broadcast. But this is something I tweet out every week. Follow me on Twitter if you're not, at FantasyFling. And this is really kind of where I'm looking in cash each and every week. I list it by the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight end, and defense. And then I give you my top stack of the week and some of the leverage plays. So right now, we have no Josh Allen. We have no Patrick Mahomes. Jalen Hurts slides back in this week on the main slate. He's the highest priced quarterback obviously for good reason. Go-to play against the Steelers defense ranks 22nd in the NFL. He has a projection of 24 points on DFS Army, which is 4 points higher than the next highest QB. The next highest QB being Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I prefer the Hurts floor over Tua, but we really can't ignore that this is the highest projected score on the slate. Miami has the highest projected team total, and the Sensational Power Rankings have Miami with the most projected passing yards this week. So with Waddle and Hill, obviously, to just decimate that Lions defense, it's no wonder why. So again, in tournaments like the Yahoo Baller, which is Yahoo's top GPP, which normally has a ton of overlay, which is really why you should want to be playing this tournament. Tua stacks with Hill, Waddle, and then just Secchi. He got 7 targets last week. We don't know how long that's going to go, but if he comes in low owned, and people aren't chasing him from last week, they're not chasing the recency bias, I certainly would like taking some shots with Gesicki. Now, running back, and there are a lot of options this week, so it's going to be hard to navigate, which running back you really want to choose. But for me, it's Derrick Henry going against the Houston defense. They're allowing over 160 yards per game to opposing running backs. Josh Jacobs just trashed them last week for 3 touchdowns, 140 yards. Now, Derrick Henry he's absolutely gassed Houston in the past. The last 2 times he went against Houston, he averaged 39 points. So there's really no way I'm not playing him this week, considering the amount of yards that they're giving up and the fact that the last 2 times he went against Houston, how well he did. So Saquon, another great play this week, I think, in cash, obviously in tournaments as well. He's looked great this year, projects within a fraction of a point between Jacobs and Henry. So I'll certainly have some exposure to him in GPPs. However, being able to afford just one running back, near that $40 range, the deciding factor for me is just, again, Daniel Jones has the ability to steal touchdowns near the goal line from Saquon. So that's probably why I will lean towards Henry in cash and obviously have some exposure to Barkley in tournaments. What a year for Josh Jacobs. Not even biggest Raiders fans that I know saw this coming. So he's averaged 28 touches over the last 3 games, projects his highest scoring running back this week with 7.92 projection, and he's $10 cheaper than Saquon Barkley. So, it really is just a pricing thing for me. He's still underpriced relative to how well he's been playing, and again, how well he projects. So 6 touchdowns, 31-point average over the last 3 weeks. That's just an easy decision for me. Now, as I mentioned, Kenneth Walker, he's $25. Giants are giving up a lot of yards to opposing running backs, over 115 per game. He's averaged 132 yards in his first 2 starts with 3 touchdowns. We need touchdowns on Yahoo as I went over when we started the broadcast. So Sensational's power rankings have a Seattle rushing attack to rush over 150 yards and win the game. So Kenneth Walker, that's the right game script we're looking for, right? We want favored running backs, and obviously they're projected to rush for a lot. Now, this is value that is trending this way right now. Obviously, don't get mad at me if Zeke plays and you paid for Tony Pollard at $17 and, he didn't score all the points you were hoping he would score. If Zeke plays, don't play Tony Pollard. But if Zeke doesn't play, he becomes the top value on the slate and probably your free square. Even in timeshare with Zeke, he's produced double-digit points in 4 out of 7 games. He's averaged over 5 yards per carry the entire season. With the Dallas running game, it's projected very well this week. And obviously against the 31st rushing defense, it's no surprise. So I'm all in on Pollard at $17. So Justin Jefferson, 3 straight games, wide receivers we're on to 3 straight games over 130 yards, hasn't scored since week 1. So positive touchdown regression is coming for him. He's an elite player. He has an elite target share. He's had elite production. He just has not had the touchdowns, but they are coming. So he's projected to be a top scoring wide receiver on the slate as of right now with a 19.64 projection. Now, DeAndre Hopkins, shout out to DFS Army's Bobby Wow. I was watching the Showdown breakdown last week, and he mentioned Kyler Murray's just polarizing game splits with and without DeAndre Hopkins. And it was obvious watching the game. Boy, has Kyler Murray missed DeAndre Hopkins. And the offense, it just looked much better. So first game back, 14 targets, turned in over 100 receiving yards. He's sixth in wide receiver projections, and he's barely priced over $25, as all of the wide receivers above him or, $30 plus range. So I do think at wide receiver, he would probably be my if I'm not playing Justin Jefferson in cash games. I'll just say that I will play him in tournaments. But as far as DeAndre Hopkins, he would be my highest priced wide receiver this week, just where I'm looking to cash at $27. So Chris Olave, 23% target share. It's more than double the next closest in the offense. So, which is Alvin Kamara. As far as wide receivers, no one else is close. Michael Thomas is projected to miss this game again this week. This is a game environment we want to build around. And the Saints, they have the second highest projected passing total on the slate. So Olave might finish as the top fantasy points per dollar play, I think, when it's all said and done, if that game total ends up being what is projected to be. Now, Lockett, kind of as I mentioned, he's currently projects as a wide receiver 9 this week, and all other wide receivers are priced above $20. So all the wide receivers, all 8 above him, are priced above $20. So he provides some good floor and salary relief to pay up elsewhere. Specifically, I think if DK is out of the lineup and Lockett's a full go, he's likely to see an increase in targets. Now, as I mentioned, DJ Moore. Panthers traded Christian McCaffrey, and DJ Moore became the focal point of the offense. He gets a Falcons defense that's allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. So he is my favorite pay down option at wide receiver this week. Now, Curtis Samuel, I got a couple different cash lineups that I'm considering at this point. It's Wednesday. I'm not going to make that decision until Saturday night, Sunday morning as to my cash lineup, but I'm going to build a couple different lineups, kind of show you where I'm going. And one of them is with Curtis Samuel in there. He's the second highest fantasy points per dollar play this week at DFS Army. And then we're going to look at this real quick, but tight ends, there's 3 guys I'm considering. George Kittle, $17 on Juwan Johnson, 2 guys rather. And that's just where I'm at right now in cash. I prefer pay down options. I don't want to pay all the way up, specifically in cash, because we don't like variance in cash, as we've established. We don't want a lot of variance in cash. So the 2 highest variance positions, tight end and defense. So I'm normally looking for pay down options, good value, fantasy points per dollar plays there. So Juwan Johnson is probably where I'm headed right now. Last week it was Dulcich. I like Juwan or Cade Otton as well. I like Juwan this week. So, and then the Titans defense going against Houston, top fantasy points per dollar play. That's a smash for me. Yahoo stack of the week this week. As of right now, I like Tua and Hill. The upside is there, obviously, with Hill. He hasn't gotten touchdowns recently. He's also due for some positive touchdown regression. He really started to separate himself early on in the season, him and Waddle's target share. And in fact, if you're a DFS Army subscriber, this is one of the most important things you can have is the matchups. And the reason being is it shows the target share in the offense. And it really shows like where it's been and then kind of where it's heading. So if you start to see a change, specifically, if you get a young guy that start incorporating more in the offense, you might be willing to take some more risks with that player, have some more exposure to them because you can see that they're trending the right way. So if you're a DFS Army subscriber, you have access to this. If you're not, what are you doing? You need this, the matchups, the domination station, and sensational power rankings. The most important things you can have as a DFS Army subscriber. This is why DFS Army subscribers have taken down so many tournaments. Not even just in years past, specifically this year. It's just been unreal. So use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription to get access to all the tools. As you can see here, kind of as I was alluding to, Tyreek Hill, 32% target share on the season. Now, this was closer. There was a point in time, and I know this because I follow this every week. There was a point in time where Hill and Waddle were like neck and neck. Tyreek Hill is now at 32% to Waddle's 21%. So he's certainly become more of a focal point in the offense. As you could see here, this is what it is on the season. This is previous week. Hill is now last week 37%, Jalen Waddle 14%. So I certainly like Hill a little bit more. Waddle's a fantastic player, but I just think Hill is one of the top 5 wide receiver talents in the game. So I like 2 on Hill this week with that matchup that projects really, they're the highest projected passing offense this week at over 300 yards. They also have the highest projected score total with 30 points based on Statistical Power Rankings. So that would be my top stack of the week. Obviously, it's higher projected on at this point, about 30%, but let's be real. Recently, we've seen just crazy projected ownership taking out tournaments. So, and in the grand scheme of things, this is really nothing too crazy. That said, tournaments, I will try to get leverage off of Hill, and I will play some Waddle. I will play some Gesicki. So let's look at some of the top leverage plays on the slate. Now, over the domination station, in fact, what I'll do is, since FanDuel is half PPR as well, I will go over here since these projected totals are not quite accurate, not updated yet for Yahoo. So I will typically sort just by projected ownership. So it's going to put the highest projected ownership players first, and then it's going to list it in descending order from there, or ascending order rather. So for example, right now, Tony Pollard is only 9%. Now, if Zeke is ruled out, I promise you this will end up much higher. But you're really looking for players who are low owned. You want studs who are low owned, obviously, who can go off in any time because they're studs and that's what they do. And also, if you can find a player who's just for some reason or another getting overlooked that week and they're in a good matchup, that's obviously who we like too. So Atlanta, for example, this week, they are projected to have a lot of rushing yards. Now, Mariota obviously is eating into some of that, but Tyler Algier, 5% owned, Caleb Huntley, 2% owned. I like taking some chances there. Michael Carter coming in low owned this week. There's a chance that James Robinson only gets a few carries and it's the Michael Carter show. So I certainly would like that. And New York Jets project for over 100 rushing yards. So that's one of the better leverage plays for me. Chicago as well. I saw a report today. Khalil Herbert is expected to get even more carries. He looked great the other night. He got a touchdown. He just looks like the better running back if you ask a lot of talent evaluators. The Chris Harris's of the world and whatnot. This has been something that has been going on for a while. A lot of people think that Khalil Herbert is just the better running back and that Chicago needs to just continue to give him more carries. If he's coming in low owned and he's expecting to get even more carries and they're projected for a lot of rushing yards, I would certainly play him at low ownership. Far as the wide receivers, some of the leverage plays. Marquise Goodwin. If there's no DK Metcalf, specifically if Lockett ends up being chalk, I would go right back to Marquise Goodwin. He's not. I'm not chasing it if he's chalk for sure, but if he's going to be low owned, absolutely. Devonta Smith, I mentioned it. Stacks with Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown. Recency bias. They're coming off a bye. They haven't played in a minute. The game before their bye, Jalen Hurts had his worst game of the season statistically. So Devonta Smith, I'm not going to fall victim to recency bias. So I certainly love him. And wide receivers kind of looking kind of flat, and I like that. I love weeks like that. AJ Brown 11%, Amron 11%. It's not crazy. It's not high. Believe me, we saw Josh Jacobs last week, Kenneth Walker, Eckler. These are guys, well over 20-30% who absolutely smashed and were in winning GPP lineups. So I think you could certainly, if we get Amron Brown, because he was ruled that he didn't have a concussion, so he should be a full go this week, and that is projected as a very high scoring game. In fact, Detroit is projected for 280 passing yards and 27 points. So yeah, let's play some Amron. Waddle, as I mentioned, if we're going to be on Tua and Tyreek Hill, yeah, let's take some shots on Jalen Waddle. 9% ownership. I like that. Justin Jefferson, he has seen quite a bit of a target share recently. Or I'm sorry, Adam Thielen. He's seen quite a big of a target share recently, and he's a guy who historically has, gotten a lot of end zone targets. Kind of been the go-to guy in the end zone. Let's take a look here. Thielen, yeah. Dead even with Justin Jefferson last week, 28% target share. So I think in that game, Minnesota's passing offense projects very well. If Justin Jefferson ends up being chalk, definitely play some Thielen. Not a lot there. I will say both Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton. I do think you can take some shots there. These Wan'Dale Robinson looks really good as far as in the Giants offense from a passing standpoint. Darius Slayton is, obviously he got the touchdown last week. They're not throwing a ton. Let's see. Yeah, they're not throwing a ton, but that is a pretty close game, and it's projected for a lot of points, 50 points. And we know Seattle has a poor defense. So, yeah, I would certainly take some shots with both those wide receivers there. Here. Yeah, last week, Wan'Dale Robinson, 29% target share, Darius Slayton, 22%. So they're certainly seeing a big uptick recently in their target shares. Let's take a look at tight ends and defense. Irv Smith does project really well this week as well, going against Minnesota. And he's pretty cheap. So, yeah, you could certainly take some shots on Irv Smith. Darren Waller, if he comes back. If Darren Waller is healthy this week, nobody's really thinking about him right now because they got Josh Jacobs going off. There's Devontae Adams. Darren Waller really hasn't done anything this year, but if he's going to be low owned, that game is projected as high scoring. Absolutely. Noah Fant, no DK Metcalf. Noah Fant could certainly get more targets. Another high projected game. And then obviously TJ Hawkinson, he scored 40 points this year. So he's always in line to be, get a lot of targets. He has a high target share in that offense. And certainly he has a ceiling that we're looking for, especially at the ever variant position of tight end. And then Mike Gesicki. So we talked about his target share. I believe he had 7 targets last week. Yeah, 20% target share. So he actually even had a higher target share than Jalen Waddle last week. So he's coming in low owned. He's seeing an uptick in target share. Yes, absolutely. So one thing I want to do before we get out of here is let's kind of build the cash lineup where I'm looking at this week. 50-50, main. Now, if you could play in these contests with non-veterans, like this is really where you want to play. I'm pretty new to Yahoo, so I can play in these. And really, I don't play a ton of volume on Yahoo, so it's really not hard to do. But as far as my cash lineup, now it's Wednesday. There's still a lot to be settled between now and Sunday, but I put together a cash lineup earlier. And there's a couple different ways I'm looking at it right now. So as I mentioned, I obviously love Henry. I love Jacobs, and I do like Hurts over Tua, but I think with Tua being in a really good game script and just the projections and just kind of not seeing a ton of value, I think this is probably where I would go right now. Is go with Tua. Now, as I said, I like DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I think you could play DJ Moore. Now, as I mentioned, Curtis Samuel projects as the second highest fantasy points per dollar wide receiver. So he would be the pay down at wide receiver. And then you pay down at tight end, Juwan Johnson. This allows us to also play Pollard in the flex, assuming Zeke doesn't play. And then we have Tennessee this week going against Houston. And we got a little bit of correlation there with Derrick Henry. So this is a cash lineup that I do like. I haven't quite decided where I'm going. I also do like Chris Olave. So as opposed to doing DeAndre Hopkins, if you play Chris Olave, you can actually swap out Curtis Samuel for Tyler Lockett. And I probably like that lineup a little better, but we'll kind of see with Tyler Lockett where his hamstring's at, where DK Metcalf is at, if he ends up missing the game as well, which he's projected to. And then obviously if Zeke's out, then Tony Pollard slides in there. So I think that's going to do it as far as week 8, Yahoo DFS. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Now, as I mentioned in the past, if you have questions on Yahoo, because this is Wednesday and this lineup is probably going to be a lot different by the time, I finally set my lineup on Sunday, just based on the news of the week. So follow me on Twitter at FantasyFling if you have any questions on Yahoo, kind of where I'm looking at in cash, and in tournaments as well. Some of the leverage places, we know the ownership projections a little bit more. Just DM me, at me. Also, if you are following, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification button on DFS Army so that you never miss an episode when we go live, specifically as we do the showdown each and every week, which DFS Army has absolutely been crushing. And then tournament tactics. If you play GPPs, you have to watch tournament tactics every week as DFS Army does that. So that's going to do it for this week. Good luck, everyone. We will see you next week.